All right, let's hope that's sufficient for the thumbnail that I'm hoping to get for this video. Welcome. It's 8:47 p.m. on the 12th of July, 2025. Sun sets in just about 2.5 minutes, and I just got back from a ride. And I wanted to talk about something that I think is kind of important. So I hope that you're able to share the space. I do want to, welcome you into this evening's sponsors. We got some awesome aged Gouda, courtesy of JoJo themselves. We've got the classic Zen combinations. Got a 6 milli vanilla spearmint going on here in the upper decky of this vessel. That is, this is an exclusive thing. It's from Zen. It's from their point system. I love Zen points. And we've got a Torpedo Sierra Nevada. One of my favorite beers. I like the way it tastes. I like the way it makes me feel. So yeah, I just wanted to say, I feel like I have somewhat misrepresented myself recently. Like, I do love to bike, but it's not the only thing that I do. It's kind of, people travel around a lot. People do be moving, and it's kind of interesting because, like, I think the average human being, travels about 10,000 miles a year. Like most car warranties are like, 10-year or 100,000 mile, whichever comes first, kind of a situation. And so it's kind of crazy. Like all human beings are like constantly moving, and myself included. But I just really, really like doing it on the bike. And I don't know why I'm talking about that, but oh well, yeah. I guess the thing is like uh, I don't really consider myself a cyclist. I feel like I've misrepresented myself. I feel like a lot of the stuff that I actually do most of the time has nothing to do with biking. Let's make a little room here. And so, I've got some list items, and I'd like to talk about them at length or briefly or whatever kind of comes up. Let me create a little podium here for my list. I do firmly believe that, if you don't make lists, I should use my I statements. I believe that if I didn't make a list, I would have very, very little follow through on the things that I task myself to do. I've been writing a list. I've never been formally diagnosed with like obsessive compulsive disorder or anything like that, because I don't really think that my experience of that is actually characteristic of the diagnostic, oh my god, criteria. Maybe I do have dyslexia though. And so, but yeah, I remember being in middle school and being in band class, and that's the first, I might have done it before. I don't know what it was, but I just remember being in band and writing something on my hand, and I knew that like it was very important for me to remember, and I knew that I was not gonna like that I had like written on my hand in ink, that I would want to get rid of that, but I also knew that I didn't want to get rid of it until I had done the thing that I had written on my hand. So it was kind of a perfect system because it had like 100% accountability. Like I wouldn't let myself erase it until I had done it, but I wanted to erase it so badly. And I still do get a lot of pleasure from checking off my list items. I mean, I started keeping track of them in December, and since December, I've had 955 things that I have done, made notes for. But, I'd say probably 90% of those things were actually done. There is a bit of a process of like, you can always like revise the needful nature of anything that you have made a list item for. Like, sometimes you get sort of is it called a strike of fancy? That doesn't sound right. A flight of fancy. You can have a flight of fancy and think that you really want to do something, but then, once your default mode, default network, what is it called? Default mode network? Yes. Once that kind of kicks back in, you reevaluate it with different kind of analytical eyes, and you're like, oh, I don't really want to do that. Anyway, that has nothing to do with what I wanted to talk about. And so, yeah, I wanted to talk about, well, I guess four things. I just remembered the other thing. And I guess I'll just start with that. I don't need a list item for that. So I was able to figure out what was going on with my cassette. My grandpa, my dad's dad, he has like a lot of famous Pereiro-isms, sayings. My last name is Pereiro. Just doxed myself, but I think it's also my username, so I did the work for me even beforehand. Mm. But anyway, I've always considered myself to be someone who like collects cliches and like turns a phrase, and I like wording. I like words in general. I don't like to write. I don't like to read, but I do like words. I like oration, and I like, well, actually that's it. I just like oration. I like talking, and I like listening. Um, and one thing about my grandfather that he allegedly used to say was that, I hope the audio is good on this. That's not what he used to say, though. He used to say that the first step of solving any problem was that you had to look at it. And so after the sun went down and I continued to, like, I went and made dinner, wanted to kind of clear my cache and cookies, if you know what I'm saying, and just kind of refocus, like, on something that wasn't the problem, because I think that that's when you actually find the most clarity. The harder you're trying to focus on fixing something, the less likely you're going to do it. Like the aha moments and the eureka instances, those usually come when you weren't actually actively trying. That's why it's a eureka. There's like, the guy's like washing his armpits or something in the shower, and then he's just like, I know how to unite, Newtonian physics and quantum physics or something. Um, but anyway, following my grandpa's advice, which I think is really, really good advice, like you really have to look at something. Every time I get a new electronic device, I will go through all of its settings and I will make sure that like they look the way that I want them to. I'm gonna move this a little closer, just for fear of the audio being bad. That's kind of a weird angle, but I'm kind of digging it. Um, am I digging it? I like that a little more. Ooh, I like the framing of that tree. So, like, I like to look at everything, and I don't just mean like just simply looking at it. I like to look around it. I like to look behind it. I like to look on top of it. I like to look underneath it. Like, I want to go 360 degrees in every dimension, um, and just take a look at like all of the things that are like presenting themselves. And so I looked at the cassette that I was trying to get on, and I looked at my old cassette, and it turned out that the spider for the lowest gears on the new cassette had, like just like this much more space. My head can do the thing that my hand can do sometimes. It had like this much more space, and that was why it was that cassette was for an 11-speed pre-hub body exclusively. And so I was like, well, that is what it is. And so I ended up going back to REI and returning it. God, these bugs are loud. I'm glad I pulled myself a little closer. Went to REI, swapped out the part, and then I installed it last night, but I didn't make a video. But I just wanted to mention that that was what happened. I went on my first ride with the new setup today, and it was really good. It felt a little crunchy at the beginning, which I'm kind of attributing to a brand new chain and a brand new cassette, just like the interface of like new and new. Like, the pins in the chain, those are rolling over the teeth of the cassette. And so I think the crunchiness was actually the initial deformation of the teeth. Just like, because the teeth are pretty square. I'd have to look at them. I imagine they're pretty square. I don't know. It's not every day that I get a new cassette and a new chain on the same day. So like usually one of the two is like compromised enough to where the initial like wear in process, the bedding in, if you will, has already taken place on one of them. And so, yeah, another thing that I was thinking about the other day, I used to live in a tiny house in Sandy Springs, north of Atlanta, or in the north of Atlanta. And this was during a period of time where I was living at a horse farm. You'll see, I have all the scars. But don't worry, he's mostly tough. And I had this tiny house, and I was spending a lot of time at the horse farm, and I was like spending many nights there as well because it was just more convenient. And my landlord got mad at me at some point because I had left my outdoor light on. Like electricity was included in the rent, and he was like, "You gotta turn that light off." And I was like, "Oh, I think he called me even," and I was like, "I'm really sorry. I come, not that you're asking, but I come from a household where, we would keep the front door light on kind of all night, like, and since I haven't been there to turn it off, I just haven't turned it off." Also gave him full permission to go into my apartment and turn it off if it was bothering him. I don't want to make him pay for things that he's not wanting to pay for. But then I was like, but how much is he actually paying? And so I did the math, a little bit of AI conversation back and forth. I was like, what's the average price of electricity in the United States? Um, what what for a 30-watt bulb, which was the combination of a 60-watt incandescent and I think, oh God, 30 20-watt LED, like the average between those two. So we did 30 watts, and then we did like kilowatt hour of money usage, electricity wise. I think those words are said in the right order. But basically, for 48 hours of consistent use, which I don't think I was gone. I don't know if I was gone for weeks at a time. I don't think so. But my dad used to always say that I was like the perfect tenant because I was just never there. I was paying an arm and a leg for the place too. Oh, youth, it's wasted on the young. But anyway, so it would have cost 25 cents to run that light continuously um, for 48 hours. So 4 days, we're talking upwards of 50 cents. 6 days, I mean, we're talking 75 cents. And it's just funny to see how much that actual number was, because I never really forgot that instance, because I was just like, my partner at the time, she was just like, you should tell that guy to go fuck himself. And I was just like, well, he's a pretty nice guy. I've had some good talks with him, and good talks with his father even. And so, I'm really just trying to not step on his toes unnecessarily. But yeah, I was always just like, it does seem very petty. But you know what they say, you should never sweat petty things and never pet sweaty things. So, go figure. Um, Also, I went on a bike ride yesterday in an area called Demarest, which is in North Georgia. It's an area that I've gone by many, many times, but never actually gone through. I've always just seen the signs and just kind of always been like, I wonder what's down that road. It kind of, Demarest makes me think of like, uh, like what it makes me think of, which is not what it actually means. It's like, like democracy is rule of the people, but Demarest makes me think of rule of the trees. It makes me think that there's like a lot of trees and they're like ruling that area, which again doesn't make sense, but that's just the way that I have always kind of internalized it as a word. Um, and so I wanted to bike back there, and I did. And there were a lot of like tall, summer grasses that were growing, and they were very, very fragrant with a smell, a scent that I don't know what it is, but I just love it so much because it reminds me so much of the Appalachian Trail. It's kind of like a sweet, kind of like musky, like to me it smells like itchy. Like that's the word that comes to mind. I'm just like, if I were to brush up against these grass fronds, like it would make me break out in hives. But it also just reminds me of like summer humidity, just like this, like you go through like pockets of hot air, and every once in a while you'll come to one that's just like a clear, like clean, cool air that you can breathe in. And a lot of the times I feel like that smell was there when I would do it. And so with that in mind, um, I was living in Asheville last year, and there was one point, I guess, I spent the summer there, and I was biking on the Blue Ridge Parkway a lot, and there was one day, where I smelled the smell of this grass, and I noticed that there was an NPS, National Park Service person, who was at one of the Blue Ridge Parkway overlooks, and I was like, maybe this guy knows like what this smell is. And I did notice that he was emptying the trash cans, right? And so, I think it was like a Saturday or a Sunday or something like that, and it was kind of like later in the day, evening kind of style. And so I went up to him and I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he was like, "Good." And I was like, you may not know, but there's this grass that grows, particularly in the summer, and I just love the smell of it, but I don't know what it is. It's really fragrant. Like you might be able to smell it right now. Like, do you smell the smell I'm smelling? And he just kind of looked at me. He struck me as someone who was like just getting over a hangover or something similar. And um, I swear to God, he said to me, he was like, "It's probably just grass." And I was like so offended. I was just like, oh, like, why are you working for the National Park Service if that's your entree to nature? I was like, I thought of like the perfect comeback just the other day, which is only a year too late, but it was something like, uh, if your passion is collecting trash, you don't have to work for the NPS to do that. Like, you could just be picking up trash like a city employee. Like, I just felt like he didn't have any enthusiasm for nature, and people have their moments. I have my moments. Everyone has their moments, and so maybe I caught him at a moment where, again, like I said, I don't know if I'm retroactively ascribing him like this, like cantankerous kind of presentation of himself or something because of what he said, but I might have caught him at the wrong time. But the real tragedy of it is, I do feel like he would know the name of the smell, but maybe not. All right, last point, and then it's time to go make some food. Um, uh, so I was thinking about this. I've been listening to this guy on YouTube, which I highly recommend. YouTube channel is called Healthy Gamer, and I'm not a gamer. I mean, I think I understand the draw in so much as I can compare it to biking and stuff like that. But outside of that realm of comparison, I kind of abhor video games just because I don't really like to sit down for very long. It makes me feel tired, and I don't like that feeling. Uh, as Nas said, sleep is the cousin of death, and so I'll sleep when I'm dead. But I had this thought about just a theme that this guy, I can't remember his name. I don't think he's from India, but he's certainly ethnically Indian. I believe he probably speaks Hindi when he does talk about like Hinduistic concepts. He pronounces things in an accent that sounds very authentic. So he might have just grown up in a uh, bilingual household or something like that. But interesting guy. Again, highly recommend it. Just like a bunch of like self-improvement kind of like examinations of ego and all of the manifestations that like ego can basically, um, well, for lack of a better word, manifest a bunch of different types of neuroses, um, and I just had this thought when I was biking where like when like satisfaction, which I think is like better than happiness, like when you're satisfied. Like I think that satisfaction is like that feeling when you're like when you get in bed at the end of the day and you're like so ready to get in bed and you just kind of like melt into it and you're just like you breathe like a involuntary sigh of relief. You're just like, I feel like that's like satisfaction. And that's not obviously the only instance of satisfaction that you can have, but um, I was thinking like what the recipe for satisfaction is. And I was thinking that like when your desires and reality are in relative parity, like, it's like sort of it is a balancing act because I'm watching my hands do this. Like this is like, so let's say like your day kind of goes like this, where like your desire might be heavier than your reality, and then you're dissatisfied, and then it could swing back quickly to where your reality is heavier than your desires for that reality. But there are like these glimpses where it's like an eclipse kind of a thing where they're at the same level. And anything that you can do to manufacture that in your own life is is a boon to your own feelings of satisfaction. Which again, life. I don't believe it's about like happiness as such. I think happiness is like ecstatic periods of transitory, uh, transient bliss. And it would be unrealistic for that to happen too much if you actually believe in the evolutionary model of biology, because what would if it's survival of the fittest, which I think it is, and like everything basically is about reproduction, consumption, repeat, basically. Like, eat enough food so that you can reproduce and just keep doing that. Like, I think that's really the foundation of everything. And so happiness doesn't really make an appearance there in a meaningful way until it comes to us existing. We can cultivate our own satisfaction. And satisfaction, I think, is a little bit more sustainable and attainable. I think that like animals are probably pretty often satisfied, and we share a lot of ancestry with animals. So it's not so foolish to think that that should be the goal, maybe over like the pursuit of bliss per se, because there's always going to be difficulties. There's always going to be strife. Um, there's always going to be aged Gouda, or maybe not, and we have to be okay with that. We have to be adaptable, because there might not always be Gouda. And if and when that day comes, we got to hope that, we can find something to make us forget about our lack of Gouda. Um, yeah. Hmm. So, on that note, I'm going to go eat some of this Gouda. And yeah, I also replaced my grips today on my shifters, which I'm kind of disappointed because my old shifter grips, they felt like they had just been so used that they were stretched and kind of deformed. And so when I was biking, there was just like a little gap between this like very nice feeling silicone stuff and the shifter body itself, and it would kind of move around depending on where my hand was and stuff like that. And I really didn't like that feeling, so I ordered some new ones, which were really cheap. I was surprised for two. It was like $12, and they're like OEM Shimano. And I put them on today, and there was still that gap, and I was just like, I don't feel like I don't feel like Shimano would do this. Like, I don't feel like this degree of slop is like expected behavior. You know, I don't know. I should look it up. Maybe I'll make a list item. I've already looked at so many things like that. Well, I'll do it because I'm talking about it. Well, this is the wrong list. This is my podcast list. Okay. Hood spacer. Hood slop. Slip. Slop. Alright. And with that, I bid you a good evening. Cheers. Enjoy. Summer is great. It's so much different than winter. I can't believe it. It's so much warmer. It's crazy.